So let's get a little bit about your
Yeah.
background. Where did you go to law school? How did you get started in law?
I grew up in Iowa, which is funny because my last name is Wisco. And yes, that is actually my last name. I was born with it. There are several of us. I lived in Mequon, Wisconsin when I was a kid, then moved to Iowa after I did my undergrad at University of Iowa, took a couple years off, and then ended up at Marquette in Milwaukee for law school. And I did a lot of networking, found out that I kind of fit into the Wisconsin legal scene, and just stayed here. And
Nice.
yeah, I graduated. I've actually only been an attorney for like 5 years. I've worked for Mark and his partner Brian Dimmer for basically my whole legal career.
That's awesome. What brought you to want to work as a criminal defense attorney?
Um, I'm
Or was
trying
it
to.
just chance?
No, it's something that I'd wanted to do. I had been interested in criminal law since the time when I entered law school, but I originally had been kind of thinking prosecution leaning until you actually get a little bit more involved in the system. And my second year, I decided that I wanted to commit to defense because I had a
Okay.
lot of problems with a lot of things. And when you start getting exposed to things firsthand, you find very quickly that the legal system doesn't actually work the way that people think it's supposed to work. And, um, you know, if everybody all started out, even I think most people, if they weren't dealing with something, they wouldn't commit crimes. And if they did, well, then, screw them. But so many people who are involved in the system, have things going on and they need help. And it really personally bothers me when I saw firsthand the amount of people who were involved in the system as defendants, things like that, and didn't actually know what was going on in their own cases. And that really bothers me. So that has kind of, shaped my approach to my job is, you know, not just me, but Attorney Richards and Sharofsky also, everything we do for a reason, everything we don't do for a reason. And, you know, it is so much more complex than the majority of the public thinks it is, because it's sort of like a master chess game, and the fact that there's moving pieces that you have to be prepared for coming from every single angle. Whether or not it's going to end up being an issue, you always have to be aware of the entire board.
Right, right. So when you got hired to work for Richards and Dimmer, right? That's the name of the firm?
Yes, Richards and Dimmer. Brian Dimmer hasn't really been involved with the case on this aspect. He did help us with a bunch of the prep stuff. He is an amazing person, an amazing attorney. But we also needed somebody to kind of be operating the rest of the firm while we were dealing
Yeah,
with this.
of
So,
course, of
yeah,
course. I can only imagine that. How many attorneys work at your firm?
we actually only have three. It's
Oh,
me,
wow.
Brian, and Dimmer, and
Okay,
we keep it close. We put a lot of attention and work and care into what we do.
that's
And
amazing.
yeah, it is one of those for better or for worse things. Honestly, I hate office politics. And so I really don't have time for that. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those nice things about having a at least small office as far as attorneys are concerned, is because there's a very, clear chain of command. Our politics are what they are. And that is just kind of what it is.
I've found that to be the case as well. When you get a smaller firm, the smaller you get, the more directly that you work with the partners, the
Mhm.
more it actually does feel like a family environment. Like, it's almost like a trope in law school when you're
Yeah.
interviewing for jobs at firms. They're like, "Oh, we have a collegial environment," but like that's just like code for like, no, actually everybody hates their lives.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I've found that the smaller firms tend to be where the better life overall tends to be.
Well, and that is a big thing, is quality of life, and maintaining mental health is a big thing for me personally. I don't think that that is dealt with enough in sort of life in general. And that is such a big thing for my clients that I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm jeopardizing my mental health because I have to take care of other people's. And I did see in the chat somebody asked about Corey Sharafazi. No, Corey does not work at our firm. He has his own firm, Sharafazi Law Offices, in Madison, Wisconsin, and he just happens to be Mark's best friend. So when Mark got brought onto the case, you know, I tagged along with as sort of part of the package deal. And there were, you know, in the beginning, other attorneys involved, stuff like that. But Mark wanted to have somebody that he knew and trusted and that he didn't feel like he had to monitor as, you know, basically the second chair on it. And this all in general, I know there had been a lot of questions about why I didn't say more and do more at the trial. And a lot of it was just because, you know, I haven't been doing this nearly as long as them. Mark's been an attorney longer than I've been in alive. And, you know, with something this big, high stakes going on, I was fine with being in the position I was in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I'm just embarrassed that I just now learned that it's pronounced Sharafazi and not Sharafisi.
Oh, okay. I think the problem is actually Nick Ricciuti with that is because I think he started the Shirafisi. If you're getting into it being phonetically pronounced, I think Shirafisi probably be regardless, but Corey pronounces it Shirafisi.
That makes sense. Okay. So with your experience prior to this trial, have you been first chair, second chair on any trials before this point or no?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, half of my job is working on Mark's cases with him, and then the other half is doing my own cases. So I do my own cases, but Mark, with the level of, you know, what he's been doing, and he is kind of a big dog in the local community, and, you know, also at a certain point in your career, you don't want to have to do necessarily everything yourself.
Right.
You know, that's about half my job. I work on Mark's bigger cases with him. And then I do my own as well. I mean, we've also done trials with Corey before. We've got co-defendants right now. So I had worked with Corey as well. But something of this level, especially with high profile of it, I was fine with taking a back seat. That doesn't mean that I wasn't involved, but I didn't do nearly as much talking as everybody else.
Right. And that made sense to me because I mean, you definitely seemed like you were younger than the other guys. So and usually in any kind of a trial, it's usually just first chair, second chair, and then like those are usually the only people that are going to be talking. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, and something that I don't think people realize for the most part, unless you're dealing with something that's an off the record objection, the judge will sometimes get you a little more leeway. But I mean, only one attorney talks per witnesses. That is their witness. And when I'm part of the problem was the setup as well is, you know, I'm across the table from these guys. We're microphoned. I can't just be like, Mark, object to this type of thing. There's a lot more of, you know, there's a lot of trust involved. And both of them, you know, if I was in the position Kyle was in, I would trust with my life. So